If you are watching this video, expect to uncover 7 love language tactics women use to control men. Female psychology. These are the hidden ways affection can influence your emotions and decisions without you even realizing it. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below so we can see where all my viewers are tuning in from. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all my relationship and psychology insights. Trick number 1. Understanding love languages and influence. When we talk about relationships, one of the most crucial concepts to understand is the idea of love languages. Most people are familiar with the 5 love languages, a framework developed by Dr. Gary Chapman, which explains that each person has a preferred way of giving and receiving love. These love languages include words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. While these concepts are often presented as tools to strengthen a bond, it is important to understand that they are not inherently neutral. In reality, love languages can also be used as a tool for influence, and sometimes, unfortunately, for control. The subtlety lies in the fact that these behaviors appear loving on the surface, but when used strategically, they can manipulate emotions and shape behavior. Understanding this dynamic is the first step in recognizing when love is being used as a lever rather than a genuine expression of care. When someone truly understands your love language, they know exactly what triggers your emotional responses. Words of affirmation might make you feel appreciated and respected, while acts of service might make you feel deeply cared for. This knowledge is incredibly powerful. In the hands of someone with positive intentions, it creates a stronger, healthier connection. But in the hands of someone with less honorable intentions, this knowledge can be used to subtly influence or control. They can predict your emotional responses and use them to achieve specific outcomes, whether it's getting you to prioritize them, comply with their requests, or even feel guilt or obligation when you don't meet their expectations. It's a nuanced form of psychological influence because it feels entirely natural to the recipient, as though they are responding to love itself rather than manipulation. This is especially relevant in the context of female psychology, because many women are highly attuned to emotional cues and interpersonal dynamics. A woman who understands a man's primary love language may unconsciously or consciously use it to strengthen her influence. For example, if a man values quality time above all else, she may know that spending focused attention with him will make him more receptive to her needs or requests. If he values words of affirmation, strategic compliments or praise can make him more likely to agree with her perspectives or maintain certain behaviors that she desires. This is not to say that all women do this intentionally, but awareness of how love languages can be used to influence behavior is crucial for understanding the dynamics of any relationship. It's also important to understand the psychological mechanism behind this influence. When a person gives or receives love in their preferred language, their brain releases chemicals like oxytocin and dopamine, which are associated with bonding, trust, and pleasure. This creates a natural feedback loop where emotional reward reinforces behavior. When someone leverages this loop consciously or unconsciously, they can guide decisions, elicit specific responses, and even cultivate dependency. Over time, this can shift the balance of power in the relationship, making one person more influential over the other's choices, moods, and priorities. Recognizing this process requires careful observation and reflection, because the line between healthy affection and subtle manipulation is often very thin and difficult to detect. Understanding love languages in this context is not about creating paranoia or distrust. It's about awareness and self-protection. By recognizing how these languages can influence behavior, men can appreciate love without being unknowingly manipulated. This knowledge also empowers individuals to set healthy boundaries, respond intentionally, and maintain emotional autonomy. Love languages themselves remain a positive framework, but when paired with an awareness of influence, they become a lens through which we can better understand the dynamics of control and emotional leverage in relationships. It's the foundation upon which all other tactics, from words of affirmation to acts of service, build their subtle influence and power within a partnership. Trick 2. Words of affirmation as a tool for control. Words have power. They can inspire, motivate, and make someone feel deeply valued. But they can also be used strategically to manipulate emotions and influence behavior. In the realm of relationships, words of affirmation are one of the most direct and emotionally impactful love languages. When used with genuine intention, they foster trust, intimacy, and emotional security. Compliments, verbal appreciation, encouragement, and praise all serve to communicate love and respect, helping partners feel seen and acknowledged. However, in the context of manipulation, these same words can be weaponized or carefully deployed to create subtle influence and control over a partner. Understanding how this works is essential for men who want to recognize the difference between genuine affection and calculated emotional leverage. Women who are attuned to emotional cues often have a natural understanding of how words affect a man's self-esteem, confidence, and emotional state. They know which phrases make a man feel strong, appreciated, or motivated, and which phrases create doubt, insecurity, or guilt. By selectively offering compliments or praise, a woman can shape behavior in ways that serve her interests. For example, if a man responds strongly to verbal recognition, consistent praise may be used to encourage specific actions, reinforce loyalty, or gain compliance in subtle ways. On the other hand, withholding praise, ignoring achievements, or offering faint or lukewarm compliments can create feelings of uncertainty or emotional imbalance, prompting a man to seek validation by adjusting his behavior to meet her unspoken expectations. This tactic works because of the way men process verbal affirmation in the context of relationships. Words are tied to emotional reward mechanisms in the brain. Positive reinforcement through affirming language triggers dopamine and oxytocin responses, creating feelings of attachment, happiness, and security. Over time, a pattern of selective affirmation or strategic verbal engagement can form a feedback loop. Men may unconsciously begin to shape their actions and decisions to maintain these affirming responses, often without realizing they are being influenced. When words of affirmation are manipulated intentionally, this feedback loop becomes a subtle tool of behavioral control, guiding a man's choices and emotional state while maintaining the appearance of love and support. It's important to note that this form of influence does not necessarily involve overt manipulation or malicious intent. In many cases, women may employ these tactics unconsciously, simply because they are attuned to emotional dynamics and know how to encourage certain behaviors. However, the effect is the same. The strategic use of words of affirmation can create dependency, emotional attachment, and alignment with the woman's desires. Men may find themselves prioritizing her needs, seeking approval, or adjusting their behaviors to maintain her verbal recognition. Over time, this can subtly shift the balance of power within the relationship, giving the woman greater influence over daily choices, emotional responses, and long-term decisions. Recognizing this dynamic is not about distrusting every compliment or avoiding emotional intimacy. It's about awareness and discernment. Men who understand how words of affirmation can be used as a tool for influence can engage with affection consciously, appreciating genuine praise while maintaining emotional autonomy. They can observe patterns, notice when affirmation is being withheld or selectively applied, and respond with clarity rather than reflexive compliance. In doing so, men protect themselves from being unknowingly guided by verbal manipulation, while still allowing authentic expressions of love and appreciation to strengthen the relationship. Understanding the power of words and the ways they can shape emotions is a crucial step in navigating the subtle psychological tactics that may be employed in relationships. Trick 3. Quality time to create dependency. Quality time is often considered one of the most rewarding and intimate love languages. It is the act of giving someone your undivided attention, being fully present in the moment, and engaging in shared experiences that strengthen emotional bonds. For men, spending time with a partner often translates into feeling valued, understood, and deeply connected. However, as with other love languages, quality time can be used as a subtle form of influence or control. When leveraged strategically, it has the power to create emotional dependency, guide behavior, and shape priorities without overt confrontation or demands. Understanding how this works is crucial for men who want to maintain emotional independence while navigating the dynamics of a relationship. Women who are emotionally aware often intuitively understand how much a man values shared time and attention. They know that when a man dedicates his focus and energy to her, it fosters feelings of attachment and commitment. By requesting frequent or prolonged engagement, or by making the emotional reward of shared time feel essential, a woman can subtly encourage a man to prioritize her over other aspects of his life. This might manifest as consistent demands for outings, long conversations, or emotional check-ins that make the man feel responsible for maintaining the closeness. Over time, this can shift a man's sense of obligation, making him more likely to comply with requests and adapt his schedule to accommodate her presence. The psychological mechanism behind this tactic lies in the way humans respond to attention and emotional connection. When a man spends quality time with a partner, his brain releases oxytocin, a bonding hormone that strengthens feelings of attachment and trust. Positive experiences shared in focused interaction create pleasure and reinforcement, making the man naturally inclined to seek more of these moments. By strategically controlling access to these experiences, either by increasing demands for presence or withholding time in response to behavior, a woman can shape his emotional responses and create a subtle dependency. The man begins to equate emotional stability and fulfillment with meeting her needs, and this can influence decisions, priorities, and even personal boundaries without him realizing it. This tactic often works hand in hand with other love languages, amplifying its effect. For example, combining quality time with words of affirmation creates a feedback loop where attention and verbal praise reinforce one another, making the emotional experience even more rewarding. Acts of service or physical touch during shared moments further enhance the sense of closeness, strengthening the emotional bond and increasing susceptibility to influence. Men may find themselves subconsciously adjusting their behavior, investing more time and energy, and prioritizing the woman's needs in order to maintain the connection and emotional satisfaction that comes from these interactions. It is important to understand that using quality time in this way does not require conscious malice. Many women may employ this tactic instinctively because they understand human attachment dynamics and recognize the importance of emotional closeness. Nevertheless, the result is a subtle form of behavioral shaping, where a man's choices and emotional availability are guided by the rhythm and structure of shared time. Men who are unaware of this dynamic may find themselves overinvesting or compromising priorities, believing that their dedication is purely voluntary, when in reality, it is influenced by carefully leveraged emotional cues. Being aware of how quality time can be used as a tool for influence allows men to engage in relationships consciously, appreciating intimacy and connection while maintaining personal autonomy and balanced boundaries. It highlights the need to observe patterns, recognize emotional leverage, and ensure that shared time remains mutually fulfilling rather than a mechanism of subtle control. Trick 4. Gifts as emotional leverage. Gifts are often seen as a tangible expression of love, appreciation, and thoughtfulness in relationships. They carry emotional weight, symbolize affection, and serve as reminders of care and connection. While giving and receiving gifts is a natural and healthy aspect of romance, this love language can also be used strategically as a form of emotional leverage. In relationships where influence and subtle control come into play, gifts can transform from simple acts of kindness into mechanisms for shaping behavior, eliciting gratitude, or creating a sense of obligation. Understanding this dynamic is crucial for men who want to recognize when gestures of generosity may be influencing their actions or emotional responses in ways they might not consciously notice. Women who are psychologically attuned often understand the emotional impact gifts can have on a partner. They know that a well-timed gift can trigger feelings of appreciation, loyalty, and even indebtedness. The timing, type, and presentation of a gift can all be used to guide emotional responses and influence decisions. For example, giving a lavish or meaningful gift after a disagreement or following a period of distance can evoke forgiveness, rekindle attention, or reset emotional alignment. Similarly, small, thoughtful gifts during moments when compliance or agreement is desired can subtly nudge a man towards specific behaviors, creating a positive reinforcement loop that conditions him to associate affection with certain actions or attitudes. The impact of gifts goes far beyond the material. It lies in their symbolic and emotional resonance. The psychological mechanism behind this form of influence is tied to both reward and reciprocity. When a man receives a gift, his brain experiences pleasure, reinforcement, and bonding through the release of dopamine and oxytocin, chemical responses that strengthen emotional connection. At the same time, there is an inherent social expectation of reciprocity. Even if unspoken, humans feel compelled to respond in kind or demonstrate gratitude. By understanding and leveraging this natural dynamic, a woman can subtly guide behavior without confrontation, creating situations where a man feels motivated to reciprocate, comply, or invest more in the relationship to maintain the emotional equilibrium. Over time, this can influence his decisions, priorities, and even sense of obligation, creating a subtle but powerful form of control. It is also important to recognize the interplay between gifts and other love languages. When combined with words of affirmation, for example, a gift can become more than an object. It becomes an emotional message that communicates approval, affection, or attention. When paired with quality time or acts of service, the emotional impact of a gift is amplified, creating a multi-layered feedback loop that reinforces attachment and responsiveness. Men may find themselves feeling increasingly invested, not merely because of the material value of the gifts, but because the gestures trigger positive emotions and a sense of alignment with the woman's expectations. This creates a dynamic where emotional influence is reinforced consistently, often without conscious awareness. Using gifts as emotional leverage does not necessarily imply malicious intent. Many women may employ this tactic unconsciously because they recognize its effectiveness in building closeness and maintaining relational harmony. Nevertheless, the effect can be significant. A man may begin to prioritize actions that ensure continued positive reinforcement, adjust behavior to avoid perceived debt, or internalize expectations tied to the receipt of gifts. Awareness of this dynamic empowers men to appreciate thoughtful gestures while maintaining personal autonomy. It allows them to understand the emotional mechanisms at play, recognize patterns of influence, and engage in relationships consciously rather than being subtly guided by symbolic acts of affection, ensuring that the exchange of gifts remains a genuine expression of care, rather than a tool for behavioral control. Trick 5. Acts of service for subtle manipulation. Acts of service is a love language that communicates care through action rather than words. It is expressed when someone goes out of their way to make life easier, provide support, or fulfill needs for their partner. In healthy relationships, these acts are a demonstration of love, commitment, and thoughtfulness. However, acts of service can also be strategically used as a form of subtle manipulation. When performed with intention, they can create a sense of obligation, indebtedness, or dependency, allowing one partner to influence the behavior and decisions of the other without overt confrontation. Understanding how this love language can be used to exert control is essential for men who want to maintain awareness and emotional autonomy within a relationship. Women who are perceptive and emotionally intelligent often understand how acts of service impact a man psychologically. By performing helpful actions, ranging from small gestures like preparing a meal or managing daily responsibilities, to larger acts like solving problems or handling tasks, she creates situations where the man feels grateful, indebted, or increasingly reliant on her support. Over time, this dynamic can subtly shift the balance of power, as the man begins to unconsciously prioritize her needs, feel obligated to reciprocate, or adjust his behavior to maintain the flow of assistance and emotional reinforcement. The key is that acts of service, while seemingly generous and loving, carry an unspoken message. Your attention, effort, or loyalty is tied to my actions, and responding positively to my efforts keeps the relationship harmonious. The psychological mechanism at play involves a combination of emotional reinforcement and the principle of reciprocity. When a man experiences acts of service, his brain releases oxytocin, creating feelings of trust, attachment, and bonding. Additionally, the human mind naturally associates effort provided by another with social obligation. Men are wired to respond positively to supportive actions, and when these actions are consistently performed, they can create a sense of indebtedness, making it more likely that the man will act in ways that meet the woman's expectations. This does not require explicit demands or instructions. The influence occurs quietly through the emotional resonance of the gestures, and the man may not even recognize the subtle shaping of his decisions and priorities. Acts of service can also be combined with other love languages to amplify influence. For example, pairing service with words of affirmation reinforces emotional attachment and validates the actions, creating a stronger bond and increasing compliance. When combined with quality time or physical touch, the gestures become more than practical help. They carry emotional significance that strengthens the connection and deepens the man's responsiveness. These layered interactions can gradually influence daily behaviors, long-term choices, and even emotional dependence. Men may find themselves adjusting their schedules, compromising personal priorities, or internalizing expectations as a natural response to the support they receive, believing it to be a mutually fulfilling dynamic rather than a subtle tool of influence. It is important to recognize that using acts of service for influence does not necessarily indicate malicious intent. Many women may act instinctively, driven by care, attention, or a desire for relational harmony. However, the effect is the same. Consistent, targeted actions can shape behavior, create emotional reliance, and guide decisions over time. Awareness of this dynamic allows men to engage with these gestures consciously, appreciating support and love while maintaining autonomy. By observing patterns, setting healthy boundaries, and recognizing when acts of service are being used to elicit specific responses, men can navigate relationships more intelligently, ensuring that acts of love remain expressions of genuine care rather than mechanisms of subtle manipulation. Trick 6. Physical touch and emotional influence. Physical touch is one of the most intimate and primal love languages. It communicates affection, connection, and reassurance in ways that words often cannot. A simple hug, a touch on the arm, holding hands, or more intimate physical closeness can convey warmth, love, and emotional security. For men, physical touch often carries powerful emotional significance, creating feelings of attachment, safety, and intimacy. However, as with other love languages, physical touch can be used strategically to influence behavior and emotions. When applied consciously or even subconsciously, it can become a subtle tool of emotional leverage, deepening attachment, guiding responses, and shaping behavior without explicit demands or confrontation. Understanding this dynamic is crucial for men who want to maintain emotional autonomy while navigating the complexities of a relationship. Women who are emotionally perceptive often understand the psychological impact of touch. They know which gestures elicit emotional comfort, happiness, or reassurance, and which gestures can create tension, longing, or a desire for closeness. By strategically using touch, a woman can foster feelings of dependency, reinforce compliance, or encourage certain behaviors. For instance, offering physical affection after an argument can smooth over conflict, increase emotional bonding, and subtly influence the partner's willingness to forgive, compromise, or prioritize the relationship. Similarly, withholding touch in response to undesired behavior can create a natural emotional incentive to adjust actions or meet expectations. This manipulation is subtle because it works through emotion rather than explicit verbal direction, often leaving men unaware that their behavior is being guided by physical cues. The emotional power of touch lies in its ability to trigger neurochemical responses in the brain. When men experience physical affection, their bodies release oxytocin, sometimes referred to as the bonding hormone, which enhances trust, attachment, and a sense of security. Dopamine, another chemical linked to pleasure and reward, can also be activated through affectionate contact, creating a natural desire for more closeness. When these responses are paired with selective or strategic use of touch, they form a feedback loop. The man begins to associate emotional satisfaction with physical connection, and his actions, priorities, and emotional availability can gradually align with the woman's expectations. Over time, this creates a subtle form of influence that is felt deeply but often unnoticed on a conscious level. Physical touch also interacts with other love languages to amplify its effect. When combined with words of affirmation, touch reinforces verbal messages of love and appreciation, making the emotional impact more profound. When paired with acts of service or quality time, physical closeness strengthens the sense of intimacy, attachment, and mutual dependence. Men may find themselves increasingly invested, emotionally responsive, and motivated to maintain behaviors that sustain these rewarding experiences. The influence is subtle yet powerful, guiding emotions and decisions through a combination of pleasure, comfort, and attachment, without ever needing confrontation or explicit requests. Understanding the role of physical touch in emotional influence is not about distrusting affection or avoiding intimacy. Rather, it is about awareness of how such a potent love language can shape emotions and behaviors over time. Men who recognize this dynamic can engage in physical intimacy with clarity, appreciating genuine expressions of connection while maintaining boundaries and emotional independence. Awareness allows them to enjoy affection fully without being unconsciously guided or conditioned to act in ways solely to maintain physical or emotional rewards. Recognizing the subtle power of touch and its interaction with other love languages is a critical step in understanding how influence and attachment can be reinforced within a relationship, providing insight into both the rewarding and potentially manipulative aspects of close emotional bonds. Trick 7. Combining multiple love languages for maximum effect. While each love language has its own unique influence, the real power lies in the combination of multiple love languages to create a more profound and layered impact. Understanding this concept is essential for recognizing how emotional influence can be amplified in relationships. Women who are attuned to psychology and emotional dynamics often intuitively or strategically combine love languages to create stronger attachment, guide behavior, and increase emotional responsiveness. By blending words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, physical touch, and gifts, they can subtly reinforce feelings of love, obligation, and dependency, making it more likely that a man will respond positively to their needs, expectations, or desires. The interplay of these languages creates a multidimensional influence that is often seamless and difficult to recognize, because it mimics natural expressions of care and affection. Combining multiple love languages works because each language reinforces the others, creating a synergy that strengthens emotional attachment. For instance, when words of affirmation are paired with physical touch, verbal praise is emotionally amplified, leaving a stronger impression on the recipient. A compliment accompanied by a warm hug or affectionate touch feels more impactful, triggering both cognitive and hormonal responses that deepen feelings of connection. Similarly, pairing acts of service with quality time creates an experience where practical help is intertwined with emotional presence, making the recipient feel both cared for and valued. This layered approach engages different aspects of a man's emotional and psychological system, from reward mechanisms in the brain to social norms of reciprocity, creating a more compelling influence than any single love language could achieve on its own. The effectiveness of combining love languages lies not only in the reinforcement of positive emotions, but also in the subtle shaping of behavior. When multiple love languages are used strategically, men may begin to associate emotional satisfaction with meeting specific expectations or reciprocating efforts. For example, a thoughtful gift paired with affectionate touch and verbal praise creates a complex feedback loop, signaling approval and reward simultaneously on several levels. Over time, these patterns encourage men to prioritize the woman's needs, seek her validation, or adjust their behaviors to maintain the positive reinforcement, often without conscious awareness. The combination of love languages makes the influence feel natural and reciprocal, while the emotional effect is heightened through multiple channels. Another reason this approach is so effective is that it creates emotional richness and unpredictability, which keeps the recipient invested. When men experience affection, attention, and support through a variety of expressions, it generates a stronger sense of attachment and increases the perceived value of the relationship. Each language reinforces a different aspect of emotional reward. Words of affirmation build esteem. Quality time builds connection. Acts of service build trust and reliability. Physical touch builds intimacy. And gifts build symbolic significance. The strategic interplay of these languages can make a relationship feel emotionally compelling and multidimensional, increasing the likelihood of compliance, loyalty, and long-term investment. Understanding the combination of love languages is crucial not to create suspicion or fear, but to build awareness and emotional literacy. Men who recognize how multiple love languages can be blended for influence gain the ability to observe patterns, understand emotional cues, and engage consciously in relationships. Awareness allows them to appreciate gestures of love while maintaining autonomy, ensuring that their responses are intentional rather than reflexive. It also highlights the importance of setting boundaries and maintaining self-awareness, because the subtle combination of love languages can shape decisions, priorities, and emotional attachment over time. Recognizing this dynamic empowers men to enjoy the depth and intimacy of a relationship without being unconsciously guided by layered emotional tactics, providing insight into both the rewarding and potentially manipulative aspects of love and attachment. Now you know how love languages can influence emotions and behavior. and how to stay aware without losing your emotional independence. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss out on more insights into female psychology and relationship dynamics. I want to hear from you. Comment below which tactic surprised you the most and share your thoughts with our community. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.